Hey Track Gang, what's going on in this week's episode of the Boeville in Newtown? Well, it's right over here. Stand by and we'll get into what's happening this week. Well, hello Track Gang, and welcome to episode 2 for 2024 of the Boeville in Newtown. It happens to be January the 8th, and this is take 3. You won't see the first 2 takes because, well, the first take I forgot to turn the mic on. The second take, the battery pack died, and I lost the light, and then the camera, well, you know. Anyway, I'm going to start this one off stating first things first. I do appreciate those that reached out to me after the first video. I'm going to probably get into more of what was going on at the end of this, so stick around. But everything's okay. It just a rough patch, you know. That's really all it boils down to. But something did come up over the holiday, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention it, and that is somebody had gone back and asked how the Walther's turntable was doing after I did the upgrade to it almost 3 years ago now. If you all remember, the 90-foot turntable that I have originally had the little sleeves and the wipers that made electrical connectivity to the track, and I kept losing connectivity, and it was because those wipers would never either stay in position or they would come together and they would short out and what have you. So I went over to sealed ball bearing races that you would use. I guess they came out or would have been used for like an alternator for your car, and those have been perfect. Now I would demonstrate it, but the layout is a bit of a mess because of all the quote-unquote scenery work that I've been doing. So right now it's not in operation, and as you can see, another reason why it's not in operation is the bridge is sitting over here. So, and if you notice, it's sitting on top of wood blocks. Just makes it real easy. I just get up underneath of this, take it over, put it in place, pick it back up, bring it back over here, set it back down, and it's not shifting it or messing with it, so that's a great thing. Now, the other reason why we're over here is because with the dam scene pretty much done, there is still work to do there. There's a lot of detail work I want to do over there. I'm not going to get into that yet because I want to start working on the next piece. The other reason being is the fact that I actually have to wait for the weather to get a little bit nicer before I can do some other things with the bridges. So for the moment, I'm going to kind of put that on pause, and then I'm going to come back to it later. Mainly because, like I said, I just want to try and get some more work done. Detailing, that can come a little bit later. I want to get some more of the bigger stuff done. So, as I had talked about, you know, my daughter actually had come down here at one point, and we were discussing, you know, this area over here and how I was going to just put up a brick wall. And she's like, that's not going to look right. Which she was right. It wouldn't have looked right. So what I did is I've actually got 3/16 inch foam core behind the 1/8 inch foam core, and this is actually 2 separate pieces here. And what I'm doing is I'm cutting these archways. Now, if you notice, these archways are not rounded off. They are squared off or angled off. As we discussed on the Willow house, which is another project that I'm still working on. Cutting circles into the foam core, especially the thinner stuff, was a real bear. And I tried a couple different things and tried a couple different ways, and it just was not working out. So we're going to go over and we're just going to do angled. Now, there is some detail work that's going to happen here, and I will get to that in a bit. I'm actually going to build into this foam core, basically stonework, which is going to take a lot of time, but I think the end result is going to look pretty daggone good. And I'll show you what I'm thinking about doing when we get over to the table, because I want to show you how I did this piece. Now, this whole section is about 4 foot long. I'm hoping it showed up. All the way down to that corner that I've still got to do some work on. Speaking of which, that corner, I got to come up with something for that incline. I'm not happy with the bridge piers being there. I'm probably going to go over and get some Woodland Scenics incline stuff. That would be the easiest way to do it. I tried putting foam over there at one point and tried to shape it, and that was just not happening. So I think going with the Woodland Scenics stuff is probably going to be the better way to go. But anyway, that whole corner still needs to be completely reworked. That's the reason why this is 4 foot long. And what I'm going to do here is, these sections are 6, 12, 18. This is 1.5 feet. So I'll have another 1.5 foot section, which will give me 3 feet, and then of course I'll have another one that'll be just a 2. That'll be down there on the end, and that's how this will all play out. So over at the table, I've actually got the next set of arches that I've already gone through and made the marks on. I just have to cut them out. So let me show you what I did over at the table. Okay, now if you hear something rumbling upstairs, we've got a toy that Emma is playing with that when you knock it over, it spills treats on the floor, and she's been amusing herself with that, so, which is kind of neat, because she doesn't usually play with toys, but this thing, apparently just because it's got treats in it, she likes to mess with it. Okay, I doubt that this is going to show up on camera very well, but this is another piece of the 1/8 inch foam core. I've got my marks in here, so you've got from the edge to the inside here is an inch. Then you've got a 4-inch opening, and then another inch. Then the next one, which is another inch, so on and so forth. I believe that is how. You know what? I didn't even look to see. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. I had to go back and look at the first set of archways. I didn't remember if I had just left a single inch in there, if I had gone and doubled it. But anyway, so what we have here is we have two 45-degree angles. It's 2 inches from the top down to the top of what will be the archway. That gives me an inch for that jersey wall that I've talked about before. And it also gives me another inch down to what would be the actual archway itself. So, you know, here again, you've seen me do this with the foam core in the past, cutting this up, especially if you saw the Willemane house. So I'm not going to bore you with me actually going in here and cutting this. But what I will mention, and I'm going to pull a piece of scrap over here, because one of the things that I'm going to do, and I talked about this just a minute ago, about making stonework into this. Now, we had talked about on the Willemane house that basically an HO scale, 1/8 of an inch is a foot. Well, I'm going to make these blocks every 1/4 inch, which would be about 2 feet. 1 foot, 2 feet, and that was good, right? That one there is not. That was an 1/8 of an inch, not a 1/4. Yeah, that's a 1/4. That's a 1/2. That's 3/4. That's 2. Okay. So basically, and I'm gonna make myself another set of marks here. To see if this is even feasible to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a couple of lines here. And we're not going to do all of these. And these are just hypothetical marks anyways. And I realize that my hand is probably blocking everything that I'm doing, but that's fine. Okay, so we've got our marks here. So what we are going to do is we're going to take our X-Acto knife and we're just going to cut into the paper. And maybe one more mark. All right. Now, if everything went well, if I go ahead and do that, if I score this, and then I come back with one of my micro brushes, I can actually lay a grout line in here. So in other words, this whole thing would get painted, and then I would come back and I would paint in, or cut in these grout lines. That's kind of what my thoughts are. Obviously, like I said, it's going to be an awful lot of scribing and an awful lot of cutting and cursing probably, but when you're trying to do repurpose, reuse, recycle, as I do, and trying to find ways of doing things economically, this is what you do. So I'm going to go ahead and get to work on cutting this guy out, and then I'm going to find myself, and I think I've already got the pieces sitting here, to go ahead and make the last two, and then we'll take it over the layout and see what we got. So we'll be back. Okay, folks. First off, we're on the Handycam, which if you saw the streetcar museum video, you know that I now have an issue with my the camera that I picked up off of Amazon 2 years ago. For some reason, when I got back home and went to use it, it decided it was not going to play happy. So, at any rate, what I've been doing, first off, let me swing the camera down here a minute. I have, and I'm not sure if I've ever pulled this out before, but when I was in electronics school, we had to do electrical and electronic drafting. So I've got a drafting board, which I wish I would have remembered that I had this thing a while ago, but that's okay. It is what it is. This is going to help a lot with, and it already has, with the layout lines that I'm putting together for doing the archways. First off, I've got all my archways cut now, so I've got two of them that are at 3 and one that's 2. So these here, these first two, these 3 arch, these are 1.5 feet a piece, and then this one here is 1 foot. So what I've done is on the backing board, if you can see that, and it looks like it's showing up on camera, I've laid out bricks. Now, one of the things that I noticed when I was down at the streetcar museum the other day was the railroad bridge that goes over the streetcar museum. The blocks that they used for the bridge piers were about 2 foot by 4 foot. Well, the funny thing of it is when I was looking earlier, the blocks that are actually in the Union Station are real close to that. So I'm like, all right, perfect. So what I did is on this piece of foam core here where I laid out all these bricks, these are all HO scale, 2 foot by 4 foot. So they're 2 foot tall, 4 foot long. And they're obviously done alternating, so that way you don't have grout or the mortar lines on top of one another. And if I lay the archway, which has not been scribed yet, on top, that is the effect that you're going to get. Now, right now, these are all just pencil lines. These are not cut into the foam core yet. They will be. The reason why they haven't been cut in is because I need to do the 3 foot section, which is this one, which obviously this table is going to give me quite a bit of help going ahead and laying out those scribe lines that I have to put in here. So I've already made my marks. I've actually, in this piece of foam core also, and I doubt that it's really going to show up very well, but if you notice, this here area is where the pillars are, so this does not get marked. Up here will not get marked, but in between 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, those will all get marked, and I've already laid out my layout lines across this to go out that way. The ones from the bottom coming up, where you're making the 4 foot wide blocks, you actually have to make 2 sets of marks. What I've done for the moment until I lay the long lines out is I've only made the marks for the first set of blocks. Once I lay these lines out, then I'll come back and I'll make the second set, because they have to be offset from the original layout lines. So they're still a ½ inch apart, or quarter inch apart. I'll get it right here in a second. Yeah, they're quarter inch apart. Wait a minute. 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 5. No, they're ½ inch apart. Yeah, that would make more sense. So they're ½ inch apart. But when I go and put the second set in, they'll also be a ½ inch apart, but they'll be offset a quarter inch from the first line. So that'll go all the way out. Any rate, so that I don't screw things up, I'm only putting 1 set of lines from the bottom first. I'll make those, and then I'll come back and make the second set. Now, one of the things that I do have to do here is I've already, like I said, I've already made the lines on this one side, but I want to make another set of lines because I'm going to need to use the longer ruler to be able to make the marks, or to make the lines. So I'm going to go ahead and come down here about halfway and lay my other lines out, or my other tick marks out, so I can just line the 4 foot ruler on that and be good to go. So I need to come out quarter inch, because we're at 2 feet, so every quarter inch. And I'm sure that this is not showing up on camera, and really in reality the only thing I'm doing is making a pencil mark so that I can line up. And of course, if anybody's done woodworking, you know, you measure twice, cut once. Well, that's kind of what we're doing here. We're making measurements and tick marks so that way we can line up all this mess that I'm creating. And as I've mentioned, the way that this is going to work is these lines that they're literally just layout lines, so that I can come back with either the X-Acto knife or with the sheetrock knife and make divots or indentations into this, so that I can make mortar lines. So I'm basically, what I'm doing is I'm laying this all out. I'm going to get it all laid out so that I have something to follow, and then I'll either take the 4 foot ruler or the my square, kind of like the guy working on this thing, you know, my square, and I'll go ahead and lay the rest of these lines. And then when I go to use the rule with the like I said, either the X-Acto or the sheetrock knife, I'll lay them up against that ruler and I'll just scribe the lines, and then that way I've got something that I can take my micro brushes later on and lay in the mortar. Now, that's the other part of this. I've been kind of thinking about this as well, is what color do you make the mortar? Well, looking at my house, other things around the area, the mortar is probably going to be more of a sand color. Well, gee, I've got a whole quart of paint that ended up being, Yeah, basically a sand color. So these will get painted gray. I'm not sure if I'm going to use the light gray or if I'm going to use the dark gray. I'm thinking about the backing of these. In other words, the backing board. These will probably be the dark gray, and I might make the other ones the light gray. But either way, I'm going to come back with. That was odd. I'm going to come back with either that sand color, or I may even come back with the same color that I used on the dam sides, that linen color, which is a little darker. But again, I may end up taking that linen and putting that on the backboard, and then using the sand that I came up with from Home Depot and use that for the front, because obviously it's going to be closer to you. It's going to be a little lighter. Like I said, I'm trying to create an illusion here, which, you know, I don't know how else you could do that. Now, before I get too much further, I'm sure that somebody would be like, why didn't you just go out and buy the same stuff that Chadwick used? All right, first issue is that stuff is on the thick side. I know I've got some of that Santa Fe Bob had actually sent to me a while back that I was going to use as the bridge abutment on the lower bridge. That stuff is on the thick side. I don't have a whole lot of room over at Boeville Yard to be able to use that real thick foam stuff. That's the first problem. So using 1/8 inch and 3/16 inch foam core back there has worked out perfect. It'll line up perfectly back there. And I don't have to worry about it getting too close to the yard lead, which is obviously a problem. You get too close to that, then stuff's going to start rubbing and it's not going to look right. So that's that's the reason why I'm going through this. And to be honest, again, going back to what we've talked about in the past, and it's part of the 2024 intro video for the channel, is repurpose, reuse, recycle. As you know, my daughter had a whole bunch of that 3/16 inch foam core that they were going to throw out. I'm like, well, they can throw it right over here, because I've got plenty of uses for it. Between, you know, doing what we're doing with this, to using it for roadways, to using it for foundations. I mean, I've got plenty of uses for either or, the 1/8 inch or the 3/16 inch foam core. So that's the reason why I'm going through this exercise. Now, one of the other thoughts that I've got on this, and I'll touch on this a little bit later again, is obviously when I go to cut the stonework into the actual archways, when I go to cut the stonework into these, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to try and dress up the edges here a little bit too. I'm probably going to make that into maybe like a smaller brick. I'm still not 100% sold on that idea. I may try it. I've actually got a couple of pieces of foam core that I started messing with for testing, away from using what I need for this. So that way if I screw it up, it's no big deal. It was scrap to begin with. So, and I've created a whole box of scrap over here too. Or if you want to take the S off of that, well, you can go ahead and do that too. Let me get back to laying out these layout lines, and I will show you what we end up with when I'm done. So give me a bit and we'll be right back. And I'm used to looking for the remote, and this doesn't have one, so we'll be back. I don't know why I'm sitting here waiting. I had to do that with the old one. Anyway. Holy moly, getting reused to the old rig. So I'm done. Thank goodness. That was starting to drive me nuts. I'm done laying out all the brickwork. Of course, I did just notice that there is one minor little idiosyncrasy that I'm going to have to go back and fix, but that's not that big of a deal. So let me go ahead and swing you all down here. I doubt that this is going to show up on camera very well, but we'll go with it. Now, first thing you're going to notice is that there's blue painter's tape on two sections of this. And the reason for that is that is the seam between the 1.5 sections. So like I said, I have a 1.5 foot, a 1.5 foot, and then a 1 foot. So the thing is there was that seam between, and it didn't look right. So some of the bricks were short, the other ones were really long, so that didn't look right. So what I did to try and hide that seam a little bit was to put the blue painter's tape over the seam where the bricks, you know, where they cross that seam. We'll see what happens when I actually go to paint it, if that's going to work or not, but that's going to be another story for another time, because we're to the point where we could paint, or where I could paint. The problem is I'm not ready. I have to go back and still put in or cut in the mortar lines that I want to cut in, which is going to be an absolute joy. The one nice thing is now that I'm done on the architect's board here, I can move this out of the way and put this on the table and be able to cut those, or not cut, but lay in those mortar lines, so that way I can go through and do the painting shortly after that. But what this looks like so far, this is going to work. Like I said, you know, looking at that abutment down there at the streetcar museum the other day, you know, or last week now, it looked like the those blocks are 2 foot by 4 foot. So that's basically what I've got laid out here in HO scale, are 2 foot by 4 foot blocks. I'm actually going to take this over to the layout and we'll see what it looks like as soon as I figure out how to turn off the camera. Stop. Now, as I was saying, I think, really, let me go ahead and, outside of the blue painter's tape that is hiding the seam, that's going to look pretty good. Now, down there, over top that switch, I do know I've got a little bit of an issue down here. I actually cut the backing for this, and there's a notch for that switch machine, and I have to basically notch the outer wall so that way it fits around the switch machine. Not a big deal. Once I get everything laid out and get it glued in place, then I'll worry about cutting off the excess for this outer wall. But I think that's going to work out well. I think that looks pretty daggone good for being hand done. You know, it is what it is. But yeah. So what we're going to do here, let me just go ahead and swing over here. Ugh, I got to take the telephoto back out. That was ugly. There we go. So that's going to do it for this week. Appreciate everybody hanging out, and you all know the deal. Wait for the high ball. Green tracks ahead. We'll catch you all next time. Be safe. God bless. We'll see you.